What's up, Dragon Brood? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to talk about some more Ikoria stuff. Speaking of, this is going live right about the same time. You're going to be able to see all your favorite streamers, yours truly included, that were invited by Wizards of the Coast to play with the cards a day early on Magic the Gathering Arena. So hop on over there and check me out. I'm going to have two things going on from noon to 5 and 7 to midnight Pacific time, and I'll be doing some giveaways. Now, that aside, I wanted to talk about this card, Arclight Phoenix, right? Remember, there was a time, not even just about a year ago, maybe, that was like the deck du jour, right? Like everybody was worried about the Phoenix being too good and it was dominating standard. And then we haven't really seen it for like 3-4 months, maybe even 6 months. And now there's enough new cards that I think this Phoenix is going to get its second life because it's a Phoenix. But before we get into that, why don't you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll get into it. So as usual, we're going to run down the deck list, run down the sideboard, and then on the back end of the video, we're going to talk about strategy as to how to play the deck and kind of save you some angst and anger while you're trying to figure this out and get some wins. Because there's a lot going on with some of the new cards that we're putting into this deck. But anyway, running right down the list, we've got 4 ops because it's the most efficient card drawing card you're going to get for 1 mana, and it helps you cycle and set up your draws a little bit. Growth Spiral, we are splashing a little bit of green, so you'll see we are in Temur colors for this. It's not red-blue like the other decks used to be that played Arclight Phoenix. We're trying something a little bit more just so we can get through more cards and get more mana. Then we have Tormenting Voice. This is a card that we've been kind of waiting to come back to fit in with this deck and possibly give it second life. So let's just see if it works. We have Radical Idea just so we can draw extra cards twice. And then we have Scorching Dragonfire. We're only playing 2. We'd like to play more, but we're kind of just low on room, truthfully. There's not a lot of space in this list. Then we've got 3 Brazen Borrower. Again, kind of wanted a 4th one, but the problem is it also doesn't block ground creatures, so sometimes that's going to be a liability. But being able to just bounce things and buy yourself time is usually pretty good. We have 4 Bone Crusher Giants as another form of removal, and it's another solid creature. Uro. This one's probably going to be a little bit questionable. The original list I put together had 3, and then I eventually backed off and just played 2. But it does help you get more mana to play more spells. It comes back from the graveyard when you have a bunch of spells you can play. It's doing a few different things for this deck, and the life gain doesn't hurt either. I mean, just more proof this card's just ridiculous, and we're still finding more homes for this and how it can work in Standard. Playing 2 Cackling Drake. Wanted to play 3, maybe even 4. The problem is they would have probably taken up the Uro spots, and just felt like these were good enough on their own to fit into the list. And then this is the card really, I think, out of the new set that everybody wanted to see in action, and we're playing 3 Song of Creation. We'll get into it on the back end of some things we can do with this card. And then Arclight Phoenix, the card we were just talking about. 4 mana, 3/2, Flying Haste, play some instants, get it for free, get it going. The lands are pretty much exactly what you think they are. We pretty much went in on all the shock lands, the Triome that fit, 3 Fabled Passage, 1 Forest, 3 Islands, 2 Mountains. Nothing really crazy here other than the obvious. Now the sideboard, this is kind of like I'm prefacing everything with each of the decks I'm putting up. Speaking of, if you haven't seen the other decks, we've been putting decks up every day. So go check out the decks from the past 2 or 3 days when this video is done. But we're guessing on the sideboard right now because we don't know what the format's going to look like. So we're playing those remaining 2 Scorching Dragonfires. Because again, if you're playing against aggro decks, mono red, Rakdos, any of that stuff, or even playing against the sacrifice decks, being able to just get those cards out of the way, that's what you want. Aether Gust, obvious reasons. 2 Return to Nature, 2 Cinder Vines, 2 Cerulean Drake. That's probably the 2 in the side that you could experiment with moving if you don't want them there. 3 Mystical Disputes, 1 Shark Typhoon. So yeah, the sideboard's kind of a little crazy, but we can talk about that a little bit more here in a second. But truthfully, the deck's doing a lot, and we definitely want to bring some attention to a couple of different situations here. So really, let's talk about Song of Creation. That's the card that's got everybody's attention, right? And the fun part about this card, I mean, well, one, okay, it's doing a lot of things, right? You get to play an additional land each turn. Anytime you play a spell, you get to draw 2 cards. And then it has you discard your hand. Now, let's be honest, when you're playing Uro, when you're playing Arclight Phoenix, discarding your hand isn't the worst thing, right? Like, it's kind of okay. It's not necessarily what you want to do, but it does set you up for future turns. But the fact that all of your card draw is so cheap when you're playing Tormenting Voice, Opt, Growth Spiral, you're going to sometimes get to play 5 or 6 spells in a turn very easily. I mean, imagine like you opt into a Growth Spiral, you draw 2 cards. So you get the Growth Spiral and something else. You play the Growth Spiral, you get to draw 2 cards, and you get to put an additional land down, and you get the card you get off a Growth Spiral. Now you get to play a Tormenting Voice, discard a couple of things. Well, if those are Arclight Phoenixes, you're already well beyond the number of spells you need to play, and then boom, you're off to the races, right? Or maybe you've got an Uro in the yard. You can instantly get spells into the yard to get the Uro out because you're just going to go through so many cards. It's going to be easy to play your Jumpstart on Radical Idea. I mean, so many cards in the deck just fuel themselves and cycle through. And then, of course, you still have ways to win where you don't need the Song of Creation in the deck, right? There's going to be times you just get 2 Phoenixes early and you just bash for 6, bash for 6, bash for 6, right? Win. There's going to be times you're just going to win with a big Crackling Drake. Like, you bounce something, you shoot something, you buy a little bit of time, you play a Drake on turn 5 or 6, and it's already like a 5 power, 6 power. Like, that alone can start getting the job done. So this deck gives you a lot of ways to come at your opponent. The other thing, too, is you have a lot of creatures that are hard to block because you have so many with flying. When you're talking about Brazen Bar, the Arclight Phoenix, Crackling Drake, all of those are going to be hard for your opponent to deal with because the format right now isn't full of a lot of flyers. So even 1 or 2 big ones is going to be enough to push through. Of course, you can still live on Uro for a while. You're still going to get the life gain, and that just buys you time. And the reason I ended up not cutting Uro from the list partly is because we are playing a lot of shock lands. So you're sometimes going to have to base your plan around, do you think you can cast and or escape Uro? Because that life is going to be critical for you winning some of these matchups because you're going to end up taking sometimes 8 or 10 damage from your lands just to be able to do everything you want on time. And there's not going to be a large way to avoid it. It's just kind of the situation you're dealt with. Now, the good news is because you get to play extra lands from either Song of Creation or from the Uro or from the Growth Spiral, like, you can get ahead with your Triome and not necessarily be penalized, right? You just play it as your bonus land, and then you're not really losing any tempo per turn. And then when you untap, you have a land that does all 3 colors. And it cycles. So that's the other thing too. If you end up just not wanting to play it, great. It's worth another card. So this deck has a lot of things it's doing from a lot of different angles. One thing I will say though about the sideboard is that right now we're kind of honing in on a few things we do know already exist. Like, we have cards that are good against the sacrifice deck. We have cards that are good against mono red. We have some stuff like Mystical Disputes and Cinder Vines that are good against the slower control style decks. And truthfully, even Shark Typhoon fits into those. Because if you get a Shark Typhoon late, and then you're able to just start playing all your spells left and right, like, sure, you're making a bunch of like 1/1 and 2/2 sharks, but you're getting a whole bunch of them and they're free, and you're still getting the other effects you want. So it's a cool card. I think we're going to experiment with it, see how it plays out, but you only want it in a couple of the longer matches that don't have a lot of ways to remove enchantments. Unless they, I don't know, Elspeth Conquers Death or something, but you can't really worry about that because that targets everything. But in general, like I said, this is a pretty sweet deck. It's Temur colors. If you're looking for an excuse to be able to play Song of Creation, this deck's perfect. If you are a fan of playing Arclight Phoenix, this fits into that whole paradigm just the same, so you should love the deck, and this should be a whole lot of fun. The other thing about the deck, too, is outside of the Uros, right now the deck's actually pretty cheap to build, including the sideboard. If you already have all the shock lands because you've been playing Standard for the last year and a half, you're going to be pretty well set. You don't have much to worry about. So this is great. Like, this is the type of deck that a lot of people could get on. And, maybe if you do own Arclight Phoenixes, they'll go back up in value and you get a little bit out of it. But anyway, please like the video if you haven't. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I have to ask why not. Please do so, because I'm putting out all kinds of content on a regular basis. So you're getting a ton of stuff to come and watch. Other than that, I think that's it. We'll see you next time.